Hello everyone, and welcome back to another ArcGIS Pro tutorial video. And in this tutorial video, I want to cover the core ideas of dealing with classifications in ArcGIS Pro, specifically talking about those data classifications that we talked about before. So what I've done is I've opened up a shapefile that has county level education data. And we can look at the attribute table that we have the total estimated populations for the total number of people, the number of males, and the number of females over the age of 25. And then the second three columns here are the number of people in that age bracket that have a bachelor's degree. So this would be the total number of people in the entire county with a bachelor's degree. This would be the number of males with a bachelor's degree, and this would be the number of females with a bachelor's degree. And the last column here we have is area. So just to sort of recap a concept, all of these columns would be considered ratio data because 0 would mean 0. Because 0 would mean that you have no one no people in the county, no people with a bachelor's degree, or no area. So let's go ahead and go through how we can visualize the data. So right now we're looking at that raw tabular data. If we wanted to look at a histogram, what we could do is we could right click and we could go to statistics. So I right clicked on the head of the table and I went to statistics, and you'll see that what it's done is it's opened up a histogram, and you can tell from this histogram here that our data is not in any way, shape, or form normally distributed, because the histogram, the vast majority of values, or the vast majority of counties, I should say, have values that are in that lower bracket. So just as a quick recap, what I did here, I right-clicked on the field that I wanted to open, and then I went to statistics, and it popped up immediately just a histogram. So that's one way that you can visualize your data. So let's talk about how we go about, actually let's go ahead and close that, let's remove that chart. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how we would go about setting up those different classification approaches. And so we're going to talk about symbolization in the next video, in the next module. So in this set of videos, I just want to focus purely on how we can set up those classifications. So everything we need is going to be in the Symbology tab. So we're going to right click and we're going to go to Symbology. And then you'll see that on the right hand side over here, the Symbology pane opened up. And everything that we want to do is going to be under, when you click on Primary Symbology. So we're going to talk about the different types of visual variables later. But for this, we're just going to click with the idea of graduated colors because it's the easiest to understand. So how this works: we have our field. So this is going to be the variable that we're going to be doing the classification approach to. So in this case, currently it's going to be estimating total population. That's total estimated population. Normalization, this would be where we would normalize our data. And in this particular case, it actually makes a little bit of sense because, again, one of the issues that we have with geography is that larger areas tend to have more things in them because they're larger, and so it makes sense to normalize our data. Because we're doing total population in this case, we could normalize it by, say, area. And what you'll notice here is that over here the map is dynamically updating as we change things. So this would be the total number of people normalized by the area. Let's say we wanted to do the total number of bachelor's degrees as, okay, so this is the number of bachelor's degrees normalized by the total number of people. So this would be the percentage of the population with a bachelor's degree in it. Okay, so that's how normalization works. Next we have, and we're going to do, for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to do the number of bachelor's degrees normalized by the total number of people. Next, we have the method and the classes. So this is going to be where we get into the content from the lecture videos. Where we have the method, if we click the drop down here, you'll see that we have all of those methods that we talked about and a couple more. So natural breaks, that's the natural breaks method we talked about. It uses the Jenks algorithm, which we didn't spend too much time talking about, but that's just the method that it uses to find those optimal breakpoints. We then have the quantile, which divided the same number of observations, or as close as it could. We had equal interval, which was the idea where you had that the range was the defining characteristic. So it would pick each class width would be the same, but the number of observations would be different. Then we had defined interval. So this would be where you specify the size. So equal interval made you pick the number of classes and all of the ranges were the same. Defined interval, you specify the width of each class, and then the number of classes varies. Manual interval, this was where you created them. You picked the different breakpoints. And then standard deviation was again based on that standard deviation. So you can see that we have all of the different break options that we talked about in the lecture video. So in this case, I'm going to do equal interval. And then the next option here is classes. So this is where we would define the number of classes. So if we click this drop-down box here, you'll see that we have all the class options. As a general rule, human perception, you don't want to tend to go much past 7 unless you have a good reason to. Like for example, if we did 10, so what you'll notice again, it's dynamically updating over here. And you'll notice that what we have happen down here is our labels and our values. So we now have a 10 class equal interval classification approach of the total number of bachelor's degrees normalized by the total population. So this is essentially the percentage of the population with bachelor's degrees. And you'll see that what we've done here is we've got our upper value. So the way ArcGIS Pro handles labeling, or at least handles this part, is that it sets it so that from the minimum value up to and including, right, that's what this less than or equal sign means, up to and including just a little over 5%. And then this class would be everything from just above that up to and including essentially 1%, right? Because 0.09 is going to be 9%, 14%, 18%, 22%, and so on. The maximum value in the data set is just over 43%. So what we can do if we wanted to, since this is not a particularly good label, right, is we could do something like 0 to 5%. And what you'll notice here is that it's changed the label. It's changed the label over here. And as we move through the map and we deal with generating the legend, right, this would be carried over in the legend. But for now, the thing to keep in mind here is that it changes the label, but it does not change the value. Right? This is still the same classification. We didn't change anything in the classification. We just changed how it's labeled. And if we wanted to change the number of classes, we could click classes and we could go to, say, 5. And you'll see again, it dynamically changes the map, dynamically changes the number of classes here, and it redoes the values. And then because we've changed the number of classes, we've also redone the labels. And we could change the method from equal interval to natural breaks. Right. So just to recap, in Symbology, right-click, Symbology, right? We'll talk about the different types of visual variables in the next module, but for now, graduated colors gives you access to the field that you want to classify if you choose to normalize, depending on what you're doing, and then what method and number of classes that you want to use based on the information from the lecture video. And then down here, we can edit the labels. Hopefully this makes sense, and if you have any questions, as always, please reach out. Thank you.